January 31st, 2018. Mr. Zidek, I think you have some discussion. I don't know whether you can present it today or tomorrow.
I can present it briefly today, and I'll present it tomorrow as well. I spoke with our county clerk about my desire to have the minutes amended to reflect some of the discussion that occurred regarding the risk assessment study. It seemed to be relatively abbreviated in the minutes, and I thought it would be useful for the public record to have that amended. I told her that I do have in writing what I said, and I'd be happy to give it to her if that would be easier.
Well, and I will admit I have not reviewed the minutes as of yet, the draft minutes that we've received. I certainly will do so today. I think it becomes cumbersome, and this is one of the problems when you try to do it verbatim, is that you would like word for word everything that you said in there. But I don't know whether it reflects word for word whether everybody else that participated in the conversation would say. So this points up, once again, in my opinion, the purpose of minutes of a meeting is to summarize the action that was taken by the council and the issues that were addressed. But sometimes it becomes difficult to have a verbatim discussion because this is what you end up with.
Well, I appreciate that. I'll note, though, that we have verbatim, word for word, what was said about February being Heart Awareness Month. And it seems that if we can accomplish that for the Heart Awareness Month discussion, we can put in things that others in the community are very interested in. And my amendments to suggest changes to things I said in no way should be taken to reflect the fact that I'm not willing and desirous of other things being amended as well. I recount better what I said than what others said, but if others would like to amend the minutes, I would welcome that as well.
Mr. Chairman, in terms of minutes and my view on it, I think we've discussed this before, but I think last week's meeting wasn't on video. The only record of Wednesday's discussion was the minutes. And so I agree with Mr. Zidek's concerns about that. That said, as of today, our meetings will be on video. So my view is, in terms of how minutes can be written going forward, I'm also okay with really being sort of what the takeaways are. With those who want to see the full discussion, they can go to video.
Right.
So hopefully this is the last time we have a discussion.
Understood. They're all good ideas, and just difference of minds. Again, my view is that these meetings are meant to exist, whether or not the meetings on video. They should be the same either way. But these are all good ideas, and it's nice to talk them out. So, item number. Is there any more discussion on the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, may I tell you that it was not verbatim for the...
All right, it's good. We're not going to...
Okay, just wanted to let you know.
Okay, we're not getting into that. Item number 6 is the approval of a resolution of 2018-1 providing the county's consent pursuant to Section 147F of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 is amended to the issuance by the Delaware County Industrial Development Authority of its bonds in an amount not to exceed $16 million for the purpose of financing a project for Vision Academy Charter School in the County of Delaware, Pennsylvania, subject to the solicitor's approval. I know that we have present today Adam Matwalski, the solicitor of the Industrial Development Authority. Mr. Matwalski, seeing that this is the type of matter that comes up a handful of times during the year where under the IRS code, county council's approval is sought for these types of financing. With our new members, why don't you give us a bit of a background about what this program is, and how the IRS code works, and what standards council should use in consideration of the request that the IDA is making?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, happy to. Adam Matwalski, solicitor for Delaware County Industrial Development Authority. This particular project is very typical of projects that are financed through the Industrial Development Authority. When I say through, that's the way this program works is these are not actually government funds. These are not the funds of the Industrial Development Authority. It is what's called a conduit issuer. The funds are actually provided either by a bank, or in this case, bonds that would be sold to the public. And in this particular case, there's a commitment from an underwriter, BB&T Markets. It's the underwriter. They've agreed to buy the bonds and sell them. But they are sold. They're financed through the authority. Money's passed through the authority to the ultimate borrower. In this case, Vision Academy, which is a 501c3 organization. Industrial Development Authority has the ability to act as conduit issuer for certain types of projects, one of which is for 501c3s. In order to qualify, it must be a 501c3. It must receive a preliminary opinion from a bond counsel, which we have in this case, that says that it is a 501c3, that says that the bonds when issued will be tax exempt, and also we have to have a financing commitment, which we have in this case, as I mentioned, BB&T, that the underwriter has agreed to buy the bonds. The IRS, well, the reason that this involves the Internal Revenue Code is because the bonds are tax exempt, meaning that the interest that is paid on the bonds, the bondholders, be it a bank or a bondholder, an individual or a mutual fund, perhaps, the interest that they receive, they do not have to pay tax on. So they charge a lower rate of interest than you would get if you went to finance this through the regular commercial lending. It's done this way to encourage certain kinds of development, including development of 501c3 organizations. So, again, because it has a tax exemption, there's a requirement of government approval. The issuing authority, that's the Delaware County Industrial Development Authority, has to approve the project, the financing, and also the highest elected official of the jurisdiction in which the project is located, and that's the county council, because for one, the county council is the one that created the industrial development. There are no standards listed in the Internal Revenue Code. You will see me also for projects by the Delaware County Authority sometimes, which is for health and higher education. In those deals, which are also tax exempt deals, there's a requirement of finding that the project is beneficial to the health and general welfare, health, safety, and general welfare of the community. For industrial development authority projects, there is no standard listed. There's discussion that you see throughout time is simply, does it qualify? Is it a project that is a qualifying project? This particular project it's a charter school located in Darby, that will be located in Darby, on 901 Quarry Road, which is an old former industrial site. The project financing is $16 million, and it'll be to rehab that building, and it'll be occupied as a charter school. Darby Borough has issued preliminary opinions as to that it is permitted use under their zoning. Still has to go through the land development and all those kind of things, land development projects, get all the permitting, etc. And so if they were not able to get those, then it could never go to the financing. But I don't know if there's any more I can say, Mr. Chairman, other than, these projects are, it's a 501c3, it's qualifying. The project is the kind of projects that the Industrial Development Authority was created to do. It has the financing commitment. We have received bond counsel's preliminary opinion, and I would suggest that it is appropriate for council to approve this project.
Are there any questions for Mr. Matlowski?
I have a few questions.
Yes,
please, sir. Mr. Matlowski?
Yes. I'm Brian. My pleasure.
Is the IDA the only such entity that could act as such an issuer? Let me rephrase the question. Is it only an authority created by the county that could act as a conduit issuer? Could the county itself act as the conduit issuer?
No, the county could not act as a conduit issuer. The county can issue its own bonds and has financings from time to time. But no, this program has to be through, for a 501c3 non-higher education, not a college or university. The only options would be, if you wanted to do a tax exempt loan, would be through an industrial development authority. There is another industrial development authority in the county as well, as the Upper Darby Industrial Development created by Upper Darby Township, but it has jurisdiction over these kind of things as well.
Okay. And they're sort of in competition then with,
No,
in the sense that somebody could use their services rather than the county's industrial development authority if they were so.
Yes, but there's no competition. As a matter of fact, they work together to be able to cover certain loans. For instance, without getting too detailed, but there's what's called bank qualified loans. The authorities are only allowed to do $10 million or less of those. And the Delaware County Industrial Development Authority doesn't have the ability to issue those because we do more than $10 million worth of financings in a year. And the county's borrowings count against that from attribution rules. So those matters, if a small 501c3 loan came through, that would be referred to Upper Darby. So that may the authorities work together.
What sort of fees does the authority obtain for, by virtue of acting as a conduct issuer?
The authority, its fee schedule is, it's based on the amount of the issuance. It's 1/20th of 1% on the first million and 1/10th of 1% thereafter. On a $16 million deal would be $15,500.
How much, just roughly, would you say that the IDA does in a given year?
In truth, since interest rates have been relatively low over the past several years, the authority's only done a couple deals per year.
So it's of greater interest when the interest rates are higher and people are concerned about that?
Well, because the difference between the commercial rate and the tax exempt rate is crunched now. And because there are fees involved in these things, someone has to make a determination, is it worth it? Because you have to hire a bond counsel, etc. When the interest rates are higher, there's a greater spread and much more interest in financing this way.
Thanks.
Sure.
All right, any further questions for Mr. Matlowski? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Have a nice day, folks.
Item number 7 is the approval of a grant to the Economic Development Oversight Board for the calendar year 2018 in the amount of $628,000 from restricted gaming. Our Commerce Director, Mr. Killian, is here.
Happens much calmer. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of council. The Economic Development Oversight Board is the umbrella 501c4 that manages all the other existing independent authorities as a one-stop shop, that independent authorities that have anything to do with economic development in the county. Councilman Zidek, we also manage the Upper Darby Industrial Development Authority, so there is a clear nexus and working relationship between the two. The Upper Darby Industrial Development Authority, the County Industrial Development Authority, the County Redevelopment Authority, the State Area Loan Organization with the Certified Economic Development Loan Association for the state. And this board oversees, as well as the Stadium Authority and a number of others. This board oversees and acts as the back office in support of these various authorities. We receive restricted gaming funds that come into the county by virtue of both Act 72, which created the gaming fund, and also a separate agreement that the Redevelopment Authority has with the casino. The money comes to the county. It is not general revenue funds, it is gaming funds. It comes to the county that grants the money to the Economic Development Oversight Board to really function as a back office. Takes care of, doesn't take care of projects, takes care of personnel costs, takes care of overhead, keeping the lights on, buying the paper. I could elaborate on a number of plans that we have going forward this year, or if you'd like, we can save that till tomorrow, or I could do both days. I stand here at the pleasure of council.
Are there any questions for Mr. Killian?
Yes, Mr. Killian?
Yes, sir.
If you could speak in kind of layman's terms of, what the EDOB, the impact it has from an economic development perspective. We already obviously heard of one in terms of making a tax-exempt bond issuance possible. But other sort of in layman's terms ways in which it it benefits the county.
That benefits the county by, number one, consolidating all separate organizations under one umbrella. In Montgomery County, for example, although they've been, for the last year and a half, they've been trying to follow the Delaware County model. We've even met with the economic development officials in Montgomery County. They have a redevelopment authority in one building with an executive director. They have an industrial development corporation in another building with an executive director. They have a county commerce director. When you're dealing with such a myriad of different state programs, PETA loans for one, bond issues for another, there's a federal state loan program. In other counties, you have to go to 3 different offices, talk to 3 different people, try to consolidate it and get it done. Here in Delaware County, you come to one because we keep it all under one umbrella. Now, keeping it all under one umbrella, to speak just specifically, we were able to forge the local economic development strategy in the last couple of years, which we've been implementing for the last 2 years, and we have some plans to implement one particular program this year. We're going to be working with the state on a new program called Engage PA, where we're actually going to send people out to sit down with the business community, see what their needs are, see what all levels of government can do to assist them. There are a couple of interesting things we've just tried out the last couple of months in doing some test programs. We're able to stimulate economic development. I'm very proud of what we've done in economic development. I feel a little old because I realized when I looked at the calendar today that Thursday would be my 27th anniversary here. I was taller then. But we've done a lot. And we came out of the recession quicker than other counties, and we're very proud of what we've done. Sorry, I can speak with more specificity if you'd like. It's always a mistake to give me a microphone, but I'd be happy to speak to whatever you care to talk about.
Now, one of the things that comes to my mind, and while it's a relatively small project, I think that it is really something that is, it's unique to our county, and I think it really met a need in a unique way. The partnership that we have with SCORE and Headroom, and I know that this was generated through the Economic Development Plan, the idea of having a business incubator, and really the way that we've been able to accomplish it, and the work that you've done and brought to the county. So would you talk about that one for a minute?
Yeah, when we had looked at creating an incubator, or an accelerator as we call it, 2 years ago as part of the economic development strategy, it was clear that the initial investment would be, we looked at Cecil County, Maryland, there's one at Carnegie Mellon University. We surveyed 4 or 5 literally throughout the East Coast. The problem with incubators are people don't always incubate out. They come in and they never leave. We have a group in media called Headroom, which is shared office space together with SCORE, the Service Corps of Retired Executives, which has become very reactivated itself in the last 3 years in both Delaware and Chester counties. We're able, at minimal cost, in a public-private partnership, to bring in businesses. We have 4 businesses, 4 or 5 businesses in there right now. We're interviewing another one. We have one business, as a matter of fact, that we want to work with later this year on another project, which is going to assist the smallest entrepreneur community in going out into the digital world, because we see that as a great need, particularly for the smaller guy who doesn't understand it. And these are folks who do digital marketing. They've been working with drones, just received a substantial contract from the United States Department of the Navy. And that's because we've been assisting them through SCORE and Delaware County. So we try to marry public-private partnerships as much as we can going forward.
Right. Are there any further questions for Mr. Killian or discussion on this item? Thank you, Mr. Killian.
Thank you.
Item number 8 is approval and agreement with Capital Strategies LLC to provide government relations services to Fair Acres, emergency services, and other areas for a monthly amount of $7,000 plus out-of-pocket expenses for the period of 1/1/2018 to 12/31/2018, subject to the solicitor's approval. I don't see anybody from the principals from Capital Strategies present. I don't know, Ms. Grace, if you can
Yes,
speak to this.
I can speak to that a little bit if you'd like, Mr. Chairman. Capital Strategies is a group that the county has worked with over the past several years And they are lobbyists who have worked for us in Harrisburg and really worked around some of the issues, some of the main issues. Over the couple of years, we've looked at some of the drivers in our budget, and we've spoken about Fair Acres and 911. These have been the preliminary drivers in the budget over the past couple of years. And working with Capital Strategies, we were able to bring in additional significant funding for Fair Acres. They were able to work with the legislators, communicating back directly to us on what issues and actions that we would need to take. And also with the 911, a couple of years ago, the 911 legislation was reenacted, reinstituted, and they worked with us and helped us really position ourselves so that we were able to work with FEMA and have the 911 fee increased from $1 a line to $1.65 a line. There was a significant gap in funding between the money that was available through the state to fund 911 and the cost of 911. And it was because of working with Capital Strategies that they would bring the issues directly in front of us and help us formulate our position. I know we did a testimony at legislative hearings, and we worked closely with them on that, and it has been beneficial to all of the citizens in the county so that we have adequate funding and bringing in revenue and limiting the exposure on the general fund expenses. And then also, one of the large projects that is coming down from Harrisburg now, it's called Community Health Choices. And Community Health Choices is a model of managed care for individuals who will be accessing long-term care. And this is long-term care, certainly in nursing home long-term care, and it also impacts any care that a person, an elderly person, would receive in the community. And it's a new model. It's going to be a managed care model, so services are going to be delivered very differently. We're working with Capital Strategies in that regard also, so that we position the county in the best light to be able to serve our citizens and develop models that are the most service to the citizens. So these are just a couple of the areas that Capital Strategies has worked with us, and my office has worked with them. I know at different times with our solicitors, we've had discussions with my Nova County Council. So we are bringing this forward and asking for and recommending that it be approved by council.
Great. Is there any questions or discussions on agenda item number 8?
Ms. Grace, do you happen to know how that fee has changed over the years?
I'd have to go back and look. If it's changed, it has not been significant, but I'll go back and confirm that for you.
And any other agreements with Capital Strategies?
I don't believe we have any other agreement, but I confirm that as well. There's not, we don't.
We don't.
We don't.
The prison authority.
The prison, yes. They've done work with the prison. They did, work we had discussed this previously on Act 22, where they were very instrumental in the development of Act 22, which made medical assistance. It's kind of complicated as a lot of legislation is, but previously the county had been funding medical care for people that went into the hospital or prison, but through Act 22, now medical assistance is the primary is funding that medical care for people going into the prison. So, but that wasn't a contract that the council has with them. It's a contract that the prison board has with them, but it is the work of Capital Strategies. So, but I will take a look and see what the fee increases, what they've looked like over the past couple of years.
And Ms. Grace, did we speak to any other potential lobbyists? Do we interview others? Do we do so regularly?
No, not that I am aware of. There, certainly could have been, maybe others in conversations. We've had I've known the principals from Capital Strategies, one of them for several years. They were instrumental in the development of the county's Health Choices program. The Health Choices program is the Medicaid managed care. One of the principals from Capital Strategies was involved with that and did a really good job for the county in assisting us. We have, and I think this would be known in the state, we have one of the best contracts for Health Choices, and it has really very uniquely been able to serve the citizens here. So, and we went back and we looked at somebody that we knew and have used them. So You might know, Mike, I haven't seen others, but
Yeah, I haven't either. I think the thing that I didn't hear you mention is the $2 million for Fair Acres. that they were-
right, I didn't come up with the money, but you're right, it's 2 million.
Yeah, $2 million with a $2 million federal match for Fair Acres that they were able to get into the state budget.
Right.
And when was that experience that you had, Mary Ann, that Ms. Grace, I'm sorry, that
You
that
call me
you-
Mary Ann. With
when-
Health Choices?
Yeah.
Actually, Health Choices goes back, it's in the late 90s, but it was a contract that was put in place. We currently have that contract. I do think it's, in the state, we'd be able to say it's really one of the best in the state, and has really benefited the people in our county who suffer from mental illness. And just the work relationship that we have with them, the ability to get things done, really on a very specific level, and having very tangible results. And, you know, as Mike is mentioning, and when I said Fair Acres, the significant part is that it's $2 million and that there's a federal match. So understanding the nuances and bringing it forward in front of us. So we've seen value in the work that they've done and have stayed with that.
Yeah, and I didn't mean
Yeah.
to suggest that they weren't valuable or weren't.
I know that,
I
but-
wanted to better
right.
understand that.
Right.
Did we go out and solicit others, did we talk to others and to compare to see if maybe somebody else would?
Yeah, no, it was really somebody that we know, and as I said, this has been over the several years, the drivers in the budget have been the 911 and Fair Acres. And, you know, the people were in front of us, and working in Harrisburg, and we said, you know, can you assist us with this? So that's really how it came about.
I'll just add, just in terms of capital strategies and the principles involved, and Peter Yaffe are individuals that I think when we first talked about engaging somebody for government relations, from a county government perspective, we didn't need government relations individuals that provided us with access to legislators or the executive branch. We have that through our elected representatives and through the ability to speak with members of the executive branch from our position. One of the things I think that this group is uniquely qualified for is the policy end of things. With the ability to develop, have strategic development for needs that we have. While I think if you just simply compared what they've been able to help us generate in terms of revenue versus the expense, it's a no-brainer. More importantly, I think just having a group like this to help us develop that sort of that have an understanding of the state regulations and federal regulations, as well as the law, to help us develop those things. We had identified several years ago, just to mention Fair Acres, funding issues as it related to Fair Acres. And one of the funding issues we have is we have a large amount of Medicaid patients that are at Fair Acres. I believe our rate is just above 90%, which places us at the top of any facility like that in the state. And as a result, the reimbursement rates had not changed over the years under many administrations. And so, while certainly expenses had gone, so that was a specific problem we identified, and we asked Capital Strategies to work on that, rather than just going in with an ask, to save more money, to justify why it is that we might be in a position to seek additional funding from the state. And they were able to draw that distinction and create, and not only be effective in terms of speaking with our legislators and developing a strategy for identifying these streams of revenue, but showing the individuals in the executive branch that it would be beneficial, to provide that additional revenue in order to keep Fair Acres there, because the costs that would be associated with dispersing those people out to other facilities and across the community would be, very bad news. So it said to me, just my personal opinion, is I think one of the strengths that they've had is not in any ways you normally identify with a lobbyist, somebody to get you a meeting. We don't need to get meetings. We need strategic development and people to be able to go out and identify those types of issues that can benefit our county, not only from a revenue and expense perspective, which they certainly have done, in terms of our budget, but as Ms. Grace described, identify ways to improve upon regulations or improve upon state laws that will better deliver services, the quality of services to our residents. So that's why I think the capital strategies from somebody that thus far has been very beneficial to Delaware County government. Is there any further discussion on item number 8? All right. Item number 9, Mr. Tabano, I believe, is an approval to renew an agreement between the County of Delaware and Elwyn Employment Services to provide custodial services for the term of January 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2018, in an amount of $126,000. Mr. Tabano, why don't you describe this program for council?
Mr. Chairman, before you is, as you just stated, renewal of agreement with Elwyn. This agreement has been going on since early 80s, my knowledge, but back a little further. But in the early 80s, the Human Services Department in Elwyn was looking for a program to help work with some of their clients. And they come up with this program where that Elwyn supplies a supervisor, job coaches, and in the area of 8 to 10 employees to clean 4 of our buildings: the Toll Building, the Curran Building, the Sweetie Building, the Farmfield Building. And what happened, they come in, they work with the people through this program. Some are full-time, some are half-days, and so forth. They go through the program, and the goal is to get these young gentlemen and women out into the work field. Over the years, I can't tell you how many people they've moved along, but it's probably in the hundreds that they've moved out into the work field. And one of the other great things about being here with the county is that we hire plenty of them. As I have an opening in our custodial department, we'll go over to the Elwyn people, talk to them, and try to see if we can hire some of those people. The latest one, we just hired one 6 months ago that's working in this building right now. The young lady, she's doing a great job. You know, this program is beneficial to many people out in the community to get them working. I can answer any questions about the program, or
Are there any questions or discussion for Mr. Tabano regarding this program?
Yeah, Mr. Tabano, I want to preface it by saying it sounds like an extraordinary program, and I really understand and appreciate the positive impact it has in both directions. So I want to caveat this by saying that first. But just so we get a sense, do you have a sense for the actual workers themselves, what their pay looks like, how that compares to to market?
they're basically making minimum wage, they're making $7.25 an hour, the employees. There's a supervisor, I'm not sure what he's making, but I can imagine, in the 30 to 40 range, $30,000 to $40,000 range. And then you got job coaches that are paid that same amount to come in as needed, so there could be a job coach here every day, or could be 3 job coaches. So, as well as, Elwyn needs money to run the program. So overall, I think it's a real cost savings to the county.
Okay, and that was kind of the second question I had. You view this in terms of competitiveness, if it weren't to be through this service, we should think of it as being something that's relatively competitive from a county perspective.
It's very competitive, like I said, the county's saving a lot. Otherwise, I would have to have county full-time employees being paid the county wage to go over and do those jobs. And at that point, it would be more people than they're providing, because with their fluctuation, they do provide a lot of people at a low rate.
Have there been any issues in terms of getting enough employees? Have there been any issues with really being able to cover the work that was necessary?
No, the program over the years has run well. As somebody gets promoted into a job out in the field, they replace them rather quickly. And that's why I say it fluctuates, There's been times that they've overloaded us with, 12, 14 people that they have to get in the program. At the same time, that does not cost the county any more money.
Thank you, that's all.
Any further discussion or questions? So thank you, Mr. Devon. Item number 10 is the request by the Controller's Office for the payment of current bills. I did see this morning that the bill run is delivered to us and available for inspection. Mr. Solicitor, Mr. Manager?
I have 11 terminations this week, and they've been provided to council. They're on the table in the conference room.
Any questions for Mr. Manager?
Mr. McLean, I don't have any questions there, but I'm interested to see that there is no agenda item to discuss the risk assessment study that you had proposed or the quantitative risk assessment that I had proposed. Should we not make those agenda items for tomorrow's meeting?
Well, last week's meeting, there was a majority council voted for a motion to table the motion that was proposed. So council could take action if it wished to move that item from the table. Do you want to do that at tomorrow's meeting?
Can I just speak on a procedural issue there? With the previous things that council had voted to table, they voted to table for a particular period of 1 week. This one was just voted to table, so it would require a vote to move it off the table because it wasn't tabled for a specific period.
And Mr. Manager, so that needs to occur tomorrow? That would be
Well,
something
whenever
that-
council chooses, yeah.
So we could decide to add to the agenda now.
You could remove it from the table now or tomorrow.
Okay.
So the concern I have is I think there was an expectation, right, wrong, or otherwise, in the community that there would be further discussion on this matter this week, and I think it would be useful to let the community know whether or not that is going to occur tomorrow or not. So perhaps now would be an opportune time to understand what our intentions are on tomorrow's meeting.
My perspective is that there's no time like the present. I'd rather we decide one way or the other on this, and if that spurs conversation amongst the five of us, I'd rather we do that sooner rather than later. Is there any further discussion on that, or should we make a motion for that?
I said, I think that, if someone wanted to make a motion, you're able to do that. I guess the proper procedural motion would be to add an item to the agenda by removing the previously tabled matter from the agenda, or from the table.
And Mr. Madden, that's something that we can make a motion to do today?
Today's an advertised meeting, so you can do it today if you desire, or you can do it tomorrow.
We could also make a motion today to discuss the Delaware County Quantitative Risk Assessment proposal that I proposed last week as well.
Yeah, this is an agenda meeting. It's for the purpose of setting the agenda.
Well, I would move that during tomorrow's meeting, we discuss the approval of the Delaware County Quantitative Risk Assessment proposal that I outlined last week.
I would second that motion.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on that motion to add this matter to the agenda?
Can I just ask a clarifying question? Is that you want to discuss it tomorrow, or you want to take action on this issue tomorrow?
Discuss and then take action.
Have there been any additional updates that have occurred since the two memos that were received and discussed last week?
Councilman McBlain and I had a brief discussion on Wednesday afternoon. I sought clarification on his proposal, and I followed up that conversation with an email and a text to obtain further clarification. We have not been able to have any other discussions to obtain that clarification as of yet.
And to clarify, Mr. Zhao, you raised the issue last week that related to the law firm where I'm employed. I'm not a partner at Schwartz Campbell. I am an employee there. I don't choose our clients. I have never done work for Sunoco or any of the related companies. I do not, I've never built anything or participated in any discussions with Sunoco or any related company about any legal work that Schwartz Campbell has done. Nonetheless, I do not wish to have that viewed as an impediment. And so therefore, I am not going to participate in any discussions or consideration of any motions on any matter affecting this based upon those objections.
Okay, would it be appropriate to appoint another member of council to discuss this further, or shall we just do it in front of the cameras?
I don't follow you.
I gather from that explanation that you and I sort of can't function as a committee any longer. So I think that leaves us at a place where I don't truly understand the proposal that was set forth last week that was tabled. I'm not sure how to obtain further clarification. Perhaps Mr. Culper, Ms. Marone, or Mr. Madden could better could offer some more insight into the issue. But as it stands here now, the motion that was tabled last week called for, I think I have it in front of me, tasked the Delaware County LEPC to supplement the emergency plan guidance document by producing a hazard analysis for the general public. I sought greater clarification as to what this hazard analysis for the general public would be. I don't know what would be in it. And I also didn't know whether or not the idea was for the LEPC itself to conduct the analysis, or for the LEPC to contract with an outside firm to conduct that analysis. If in fact it is the intention of the LEPC to, or this motion to ask the LEPC to seek outside firms to conduct the analysis, and if in fact the analysis sought largely mirrors the analysis that I set forth in my proposal, then it would seem to me that the only dispute is whether or not the LEPC should be the entity trying to obtain this risk assessment, or whether or not the committee that I set up, that I propose to be set up, should be the entity to solicit this risk assessment. And if that really is the only dispute, then it seems to me that that should be a bridge that we could cross. I don't have any pride of authorship in my proposal. I propose that there be 5 certain members that serve on a committee to solicit this assessment, but I am happy, as we sit here today, I'll be happy tomorrow, I'll be happy the next day and yesterday too, to have others serve on this committee if we want there to be more people, fewer people, different people. I don't have an issue with that. So I'm not sure where we go from here, and I'm not sure whether your abstention precludes you from further illuminating your proposal, or whether or not others on council wish to kind of take up the mantle.
All right, so is there any further discussion on, there's a motion and a second to add an item to the agenda? All right,
Just for clarification, the motion to add the item is to add the item that Mr. Zidak was speaking on last week?
I believe that's what he indicated.
Correct, but I guess what I'd say to that is, with the open mind that if there is some changes that we'd like to make between now and tomorrow about the specifics of it, I'd love to hear that discussed, and if that's through the form of a committee that was formed a few weeks back by Mr. Chairman, I'd be open to that as well. But if that were to occur, as Mr. Zidak pointed out, we need a replacement representative on that committee. So I understand your recusal, Mr. Chairman, but in terms of the committee that you formed, do you feel willing or able to discuss that?
Well, I will, step back from that committee. It appears to be Mr. Culp's turn on the wheel. So I will appoint Mr. Culp. If he wants to step in and join that committee, he's welcome to do so.
Thank
So
you.
I'll make that appointment. And once again, we're back to the matter on the table is the motion proposed by Mr. Zidak, seconded by Mr. Madden. Is there any further discussion on that motion?
My only clarification would be whether this is an agenda item for vote tomorrow based on this committee, new committee not having met, and whether or not we would have thorough time to review and make sure we're making a good decision on this that benefits the residents in the county and gets to the solution that we're looking forward to occur. You know, is this an agenda item for tomorrow that you see occurring today, or something that we need to do some additional work on to occur to bring a good formal recommendation to council?
My view on it would be that this, as we've heard over the last few weeks, it is a matter of urgency. And to the extent that we discuss tomorrow and we feel that essentially we're in the same place, that we don't have a majority that feels comfortable moving forward with the creation of a committee of some sort to undertake a risk assessment or to hire for risk assessment to be done, then so be it, we're at where we are. But I would not feel comfortable just sort of allowing another week to go by without some sort of discussion. So I would say yes, that I think despite the short time frame, there has been significant discussion on this. I really do think we ought to have this on the agenda tomorrow.
Can I make a suggestion? If you were to have on the agenda a discussion, I think at the end of the discussion, if all of you felt comfortable about a vote, you could vote. At the end of it, if you know, and I think at least put a discussion on the agenda and, you know, let it move forward from that.
And the suggestion would be that if we're not comfortable with the vote, we could always move to table the matter for another week.
You could. I think there's a lot of information here. I don't sit in any of your chairs, but I think that there's a lot of information
Well,
here.
let's clarify, Mr. Zidek, you had a specific motion. Well, restate your motion.
I moved that we consider and vote upon the proposal that I read last week for the Delaware County quantitative risk assessment.
Okay, so that's the motion that has been made.
To be clear, is that the same as saying a motion to approve?
That was my intention, yes.
So that's been the motion under discussion. Is there any further discussion on that motion?
So that is the motion for your recommendation, not the motion that was tabled for the LEPC.
Correct.
Is that correct? So you're making a new motion, not moving to remove the issue that's been tabled.
That is correct.
Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion to add the agenda item say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
And I will not vote. So the motion does not carry. Is there any?
Perhaps there's another way of stating the motion or a revised motion that can get a majority here. I don't want to get hung up on Mr. Zidek's proposal, Mr. McBlain's proposal, but I would like to make a motion to approve the establishment of a committee or some governing body to perform or hire to be performed a risk assessment with regards to the Mariner East pipeline. And I state that to sort of get off whether it's, Mr. McBlain